Creating, like researching, is a journey of researching. A journey made of questions, of uncertainties, and to the unknown. What are the stories being told by others in different places? How might we tell the stories that transform ourselves and the worlds we're a part of? How might we travel together, carefully?
I would describe the CreaTures project as a project that really tries to see and investigate and understand the transformative potential of art and creative practice.
Trying to show something that many people already know or feel, that arts are changing something in the world.
A hybrid creature in itself, trying to, in simple words, change the world for the better. And what that means is the question that we're all trying to figure out.
It's an experimentation, but also a collective of people with shared values, but also, very importantly, openness.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a discussion about that because I wrote down removing that distinction between nature and
we have been trying to work together, a few of us of the original consortium, and this EU call was a good match. We have been discussing with Anne at the University of Sussex and with Jazz at RMIT and some other of the partners that it would be nice to do something in this space.
So we are trying to really see how engagement happens, when, who is involved, and what impact does it have, and how it shapes the creative practice.
How open is our open, so to speak? And we also, it was actually written here that we consciously have a non-stable nature.
Now we make a proposal and find some other nice people to work with. And here we are.
Different people and different relationships.
When we're talking about how policy understands creative practice, how creative practitioners understand policy, and how research can feed into that, it's not so much about what creative practitioners are doing, but about what's the space between and how do we fill it so that people can come together and understand each other's practice and be supportive of it.
Like everything, so if someone asks me quite often, what's your process? I draw that because I'm not doing one thing and then the next. Right? So say this is. But then you want to give something.
XP is the shorthand for experimental productions. And in CreaTures we use this term to describe creative projects using the methods and approaches from art, design, craft.
Actually, this has become more like that. So
What we've done is look across the huge field of creative practice that we're sort of talking about, art, design and social change. And we're really trying to spot the big important movements within that space.
I think I would like to say that in this project we have joked a little bit about the concept of Pandora's box, that we've opened the Pandora's box. And it's a different story when you write a project application where everything's a bit of an abstract level and then suddenly you have 20 these kind of very exploratory experimental projects, and then you try to work through and synthesize into this kind of a framework. And I think in that there was a moment where we thought, okay, we have opened something that we cannot manage.
We talk with funders and we talk with policymakers about how do you evaluate this work, how do you determine what has value, and how do you think about that a different way. If a design studio is making something and we count it in terms of how many people come to the exhibition, and we maybe don't talk about how their work influences peers, other artists from all around the world, we're missing a huge part of what they're doing. And so when those sort of like ways to understand creative practice are opened up in evaluation, it may mean that there might be much more possible with creative practice for changing society. Yeah.
It's things like reflection time, funding for this kind of thing, continuity. There are all kinds of reasons why arts practice has been challenged in being able to communicate effectively to policy. But I think there's also a kind of a reservation that art shouldn't be seen as something that's entirely functional.
Invocation for Hope is an art installation. It invites visitors to enter a burned forest. And as they meander past the skeletal remains, they arrive at the heart, at the center of this forest, which is actually green, and multiple different species of plants and trees have started growing. So the forest has resurged and come back to life. And at the heart of it is a pool that visitors can look into. And when they look into the pool, they see a reflection of an animal looking back at them. The whole idea of this piece is to bring people directly in connection with not just anthropogenic climate change, but also the possibility of hope. With Refuge for Resurgence, a lot of inspiration was drawn from my own culture in India around mythic, multi-species world. We were just imagining an alternate possibility from what we call mythopoetics, or the idea of what Donna Haraway called speculative fabulations. These species, including pests and vermin like a pigeon and a rat, get a seat at the table because of their ecological right. What does it mean to have all these other species have equal footing with us as humans and come around and together around food? Food is something that connects all cultures and all people together.
To sit once more with humility and respect at the table of our kinship, at the table of our shared purpose, at the table of our shared fate, to sit together in the acknowledgement that we are one with the eternal dance of our restless earth.
Without the CreaTures project, we wouldn't have had the chance to really do the work of imagining these other possibilities. Is profoundly impactful for us. And then to do it in conversation with so many other people who are thinking about these but with different interests and different lenses meant that we felt we were carried along.
Presentation of the XPs for the final event. This is done mostly by the work package 5, CreaTures, and by Zemos. Their implementation and the data collection, but then as I mentioned, the analysis of the data is continuing till the very end of the project.
Basically, CreaTures just started and then the pandemic hit so soon after, and many of our creative practitioners who are just so used to doing long-term, place-based, in-person work, we're having to figure out, hey, what can we all do together on Zoom? I think what's really inspiring about CreaTures is that it was kind of born into crisis. We started, I think, February 2020, and by March, many of our creative organisations had to shut down. They had lost major chunks of their funding. The whole sector was just plunged into the dark suddenly. And what came through in that moment was a focus on care that was, I think, already there.
So welcome to the SMEA 2 station. This forest field station is 100-year-old. I'm sharing my screen with a map that you can see an aerial view of the station. This walking tour is part of a project we have that's called Open Forest. So we're collecting for that stories and all kinds of data around some of the trees and around some of the creatures. So we're asking you to, while we walk, to pay attention to some of the creatures you would see and meet. One is this original research forest in Finland. Another one is the urban forest in Melbourne. A third one is a protected area in Czech Republic, and the fourth one it's an area of forest gardens of the indigenous people, the Kansa, in the south of Colombia. So our idea has been to think about the data that's being produced about these places in relationship to something that's as complex as climate change and biodiversity loss, and complicated with stories that are also more probably qualitative, more experiential about what those forests mean for the people that live or work or inhabit them. In the forest, they have calculated they are collecting around 2,600 data points. That includes measuring aerosols, flux gases, photosynthesis, radiation, sap flow. This is a so-called Huttu cottage, and that includes a lot of the gas measurements. They have pipes along the forest. You would see from Marketa's screen the path. So you cannot walk outside of this path because there's all kinds of tubes and things in the soil. You could see briefly from Jeff's screen there was a table there in the forest, which is the work of artist Agnes Meyer-Brande. She was an artist in residence in the station in 2015, and she produced this Tia limetry station. And there's a webcam also following how the tea limetry station is working. Is there somebody having a tea with a tree?
For me, I guess key learnings through the Open Forest project is really related to the feral methods. Because you know how it sometimes is, you see something written on a paper, you read some theoretical paper about how methods in design are being put in place, and you are thinking, oh, that makes sense. And with the feral, I sort of had the same relation to the word feral. It looked cool, but I really didn't, I didn't know what it can do to me. And when we started with the project, I was really surprised, like how many new things I found out about forests and about myself as well, through this deliberate, letting things go beyond my control, which implies, for instance, not having clear boundaries on my movements through space and time. Not setting, exact duration of a walk, not setting any map that I would walk along.
And now we are approaching the mast. This is probably one of the most expensive pieces of equipment in the station. It's a 180 meters tall mast. It measures every 5 and 10 meters different kinds of measurements, everything from temperature, wind direction, fluxes, and aerosols that come both from this forest and some of the managed forests that surround the station. At some point, you can see the mast, how high it is. So a work of an artwork by Terike Tapeoja. It's called Carbon Tree, and you can visit there's an interesting visualization that tells about how much carbon sink this particular tree is producing. And we can get a peep inside the data hub from Jeff's screen. You can see some of the computers and some of the oxygen and other gases. Cylinders are there, lots of cables around. I think from Marketa's screen, you can see the side of the, soon you would see the side of the cottage where you can see all the cables coming in from the instruments. It's an interesting site. It's a repurposed summer cottage.
This is the hologram.
I saw you holding something up above your head, something heavy. But you had this confidence on your face that it's not gonna fall on you.
The hologram is a viral 4-person health monitoring and diagnostic system. It's practiced from couches and kitchen tables all around the world.
I saw you resting, sleeping, sort of like a bird in a cage, also trying to defend yourself.
It also felt like you were actually generating power through resting.
Yeah, you seem to be quite still.
The hologram invited 3 people they already knew to meet with them regularly for support. Each of these 3 people asked questions. Specifically, Julio is asking questions about social health, Felicia is asking questions about mental and emotional health, while Alice is asking questions about physical health.
Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about was, that even though we have been meeting for so long now, I still feel like a burden when I ask you to meet, and it feels really...
I'm Ruth Catlow. I'm the co-founder, co-director of Furtherfield. We are producing 2 experimental projects as part of CreaTures. We have a small project called The Hologram, which is a peer-to-peer feminist healthcare project by Cassie Thornton. Just as we were getting started, the global pandemic hit. And there is something around the topics that we were working on and the people who were involved in pulling this together that has brought a close focus on care. I think it's really powerful to have the opportunity for us to be looking at care through all these different perspectives at this moment. And I think it, again, just gives it this other kind of resonance that I hope will feed into the work of other people in a useful and supportive way.
Sometimes in the summer, I'm thirsty all the time, like a lot. And it shows in my hair.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Skirius. I'm a young North London squirrel, 2.5 years of age. I'm a hard worker, like working out. Yeah, I'm the co-chair for this evening's assembly and really, really pumped about putting on a interspecies festival next year. Chewy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Wonderful, Chewy.
The Treaty of Finsbury Park, a series of live action role plays. So this is like an immersive fiction played by many people in the park and online to explore how people might identify more with the different species, different life forms in the park.
Now I'm so curious to hear from all of you. Who are you and what is your greatest talent?
I think my biggest talent is hurling other beetles into the air, but that's less appreciated by other species. It's just the female stag beetles who really like to see that, I believe, at least. And also I think what's appreciated is also just my fierce appearance.
What is it?
It's a cyanobacteria. They are very, very tiny. You cannot see it with your eyes. You need to use a microscope in order to see them. They are very tiny, 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 and very, very, very old. They changed the world. They managed to turn sunlight into their food in order to produce oxygen. So all other animals could live happily on Earth, including humans. Since this bacteria is so healthy and so easy to grow, there is an idea to bring it to Mars. So the first people on Mars can eat healthy food, healthy green food, as cyanobacteria can produce.
Why do people want to go to Mars?
Well, because people build factories, people take things from ground, and when you build factories, you also destroy Earth. You pollute it, you use all the resources which are there. Maybe people are looking for another places to do the same, because Earth cannot serve this purpose anymore.
I don't talk about sustainability very much because for me there's something about eco-social transitions and transformations that's really important.
If sustainability is about what kind of future do we want, then the question is who is the we? And it's really about power and about politics, and it's about the good life.
But I suppose the intention behind when I do say it is the sense of multi-species flourishing, in more simple words, a world, a society where humans and other beings live well.
Yeah, I think for me right now sustainability just means really being one with everything, and just recognizing and feeling that everything you do has a consequence, even if it's hidden or a secret or whatever.
Now there's a chance for people who do want to consider other factors like social and ecological justice to step in and say, crisis, let's change. And that's not about sustainability for me, that's about movement and about learning to travel well together. And so I'm trying to reconceptualize a lot of this as a journey that we now go on, and how do we become more confident with uncertainty. And I think that's one of the reasons I really admire a lot of the arts practices we're working with, because I'm seeing a chance to say, what if, and create alternatives, but I'm also seeing something which has a fluidity that a lot of other practices just don't incorporate.
What do they do on Mars?
Well, probably the same as on Earth. And when they will exploit it, when they will use what they wanted from it, they will probably look for another planet to be on. Another planet to be.
Mycelia is lately often used in contemporary art because it's an organism that is so much different from us. We humans are kind of brain-centered, and mycelia has this dispersed way of functioning, how it transforms information. So mycelia is often used as a sort of metaphor for information that travels like internet, like wet web.
In the Baltic Sea Lab, I wanted to see whether I can engage local communities into these topics around sea health and their own, become more aware of their own connection to the ocean. And transformational processes is almost like three energies that you need to grow together and combine. It's knowing, caring, and acting. So all three together will make a change happen. So when you go to a new place, you then think, okay, who are the people who are knowing what we need to know? Who are the people who are caring here already? And who knows how to act? And in a way, that's kind of how you then have a look at what needs to be nurtured, what needs to grow in addition to what's already there, and where we are lacking maybe, like what are we lacking? Do we not know enough, or do we not know what to do with that knowledge?
What does it mean to maximize participation? Because you can't quite measure it. One thing that we've learned, and I think a lot of people know within the project by now, is that we can't simply look at numbers to understand participation or impact. Recently, I've been told by a collaborator that they do not wish to use the word impact because it sounds quite violent in some ways, and it's impact. So there's something, a force being applied to something else. And when we are trying to be participatory in a true sense, or genuine sense, as much as possible, is that the right kind of mindset that we should have, or an image, one way? Force. I don't think it is. It's more like weaving, or it's more like dancing together. So it's more of influence, perhaps. Influence would be a better term.
That would be the dream come true.
Our XP is called the Sustainable Futures game, which is basically a design game for imagining alternative futures.
The purpose of the game is to help players co-imagine a desirable future state of a commonly decided city in 2030 through fictional storytelling and design prompts, and thereafter backcast ways to tackle critical challenges to reach co-narrated future. The initial intention was to develop a physical board game. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and its consequences, a digital version was developed besides the physical board game.
I see it as a beginning for something which I hope would grow in the future. I hope to see many more consortiums like this that really combine discussions about sustainability transformations on kind of like transformational political level and the creative practices. And I feel like we have not seen enough of this in the past. Like even kind of me professionally combining kind of service design and sustainability has been
kind of like a rare combination, even until now. So I would like to see these interconnections strengthened. And of course, artists and designers have been addressing these questions for such a long time, but like kind of acknowledging this institutionally is something.
Commons Poly proposed you a battle between the speculators and the players. Commons Poly is a non-profit and open-source board game which celebrates the idea of a culture of cooperation, but also fights against neoliberal privatization. So you have a board in which you obtain 4 types of goods, and these goods can be private, public, or commons. So your goal is to convert as much as you can commons or public.
También, si quieres, puedes convertirlo en tuyo. Y es la primera vez que esto sucedería en el juego. ¿Quieres? Pues...
Can build affections, and from there you could do many things. There is no creative practice without affections and affinity, or at least it is less powerful. That's why I think finding new friends from the research world, but also from the creative practitioners, it is already a huge outcome from CreaTures.
So if you feel like that, can you please share with us what kind of creature are you?
So I don't have to think about this a lot. For me, it's the raven.
It's just such a beautiful sense of like connection and just the friendships that emerged out of this project, and I think that's really not something to be taken for granted when you have these genuine, beautiful relationships that emerge in the process of working together, especially with something that is so complex, and that's something that I personally treasure the most.
Yeah, the caring aspect, and that has definitely been of advantage for a wider audience, not just those who are involved in CreaTures. So I think I'd like to say thank you to all the people who are part of the CreaTures project, because it has felt so inclusive and so desiring of something good, of something better.
So like carrying the creatures' energies further.
Yes.
Any artwork that is reflective and critical, I think, you are also faced necessarily with the problematic parts of the world. All these elements of maybe what you call dystopia. But I think it's important to realize that there is no future that would look the same to everyone. And there is just this shared sense of urgency.
So many of our projects are about caring differently and better within our environments, as part of environments, as part of ecologies, as part of this planetary wholeness. And for me, that's not naive or utopian, it's just crucial.
There is that fluidity, some of which is choreographed, some of which is serendipitous, some of which takes us back, some takes us forward, but it's not just a straight line.
Yeah, I think the notion of having a sense of what kind of future are we trying to invent and bring into present has been really important as part of this project, right? Because the kind of how we imagine the future, that informs entirely everything that we do now. And I think a big part of CreaTures' work was to challenge the existing narratives of what the future is.
Whose utopia? Because we're so different. And how we might be able to imagine the futures or even the past is really different, I think. I don't know what the future is. If anyone knows, please tell me, but not giving up is really important, I think. disasters, agonies, they're all tangled. So again, entanglements is at the center of how I think about these things. It's a matter of tangling, untangling all the time. In a way, it's dancing, but you can't do that yourself. So again, with others, through relation building.
Maybe it's not about future, maybe it's about the length of the now. And I think there is this long now foundation, for example, and these kind of stretching the now, stretching what we have as a time frame that we consider when we're making decisions into a much longer scope. I think that's what we need to do.
How can we think about or imagine different futures, whether it's utopian or dystopian? With an understanding, it is really diverse. Not just singular utopia, may as well be a dystopia.